So why is it that we are surprised when our own leaders falter, when they do not always live up to their own ideals, when they appear human? It should not come as a surprise to many of you that I consider myself somewhat of a perfectionist. I like everything in its place, and I do believe there is a place for everything. The problem is, and this will only be stated once, the problem is that I'm imperfect. My own typos drive me crazy. While I know it's not the end of the world, I struggle against myself in the glare of my humanity. Yet I believe, and the psalm proclaims, that it is in these very moments, the moments when we are most vulnerable, the moments when we are most broken, that God is most alive within us. I also believe that it is in the midst of our brokenness, in the awareness of our wounded humanity, that we can find the capacity to become healers. Healers not only of our own broken hearts, but healers of a broken, divided, and conflicted world. Most of you know from earlier sermons that I went to seminary with the hope and expectation that God would make me straight. I had tried everything else. I followed everything that I had been taught. Becoming a minister was my last hope. Needless to say, it didn't work. Coming out, against all expectation, helped me to become a better person. Indeed, the process of coming out provided the very tools I would need for ministry. Those were painful weeks in which I thought my world had come to an end. I had no idea what I would do with my life. Yet one moment stands out in my faith journey. After being at Drew Theological Seminary for several weeks, I found myself drawn to the chapel. Alone, I opened my heart to God and poured out all of my fears, my disappointments, my hurt, my despair. Finally, when I felt my heart could bear no more, I found myself saying to God, everything I've been taught is that I'm going to hell for who I am. But even if that's true, I still choose to follow you. At that moment, I was no longer afraid, for I had laid claim to my own broken humanity. When I first announced that I was entering the ministry, a former pastor sent me a book by Henry Nouwen, a Catholic priest and writer who worked with persons with developmental disabilities. The book was entitled The Wounded Healer, and its title has become for me a metaphor for ministry. Nouwen writes, it seems necessary to reestablish the basic principle that no one can help anyone without becoming involved, without entering with his or her whole person into the painful situation, without taking the risk of becoming hurt, wounded, or even destroyed in the process. The beginning and the end of all Christian leadership, and I would include all faithful leadership, is to give your life for others. Referring to faithful leadership, Nouwen adds, he or she is called to be the wounded healer, the one who must look after his or her own wounds, but be prepared to heal the wounds of others. Nouwen argues, perhaps the main task of the ministry is to prevent people from suffering for the wrong reason. Many people suffer because of false suppositions on which they have based their lives. That supposition is that there should be no fear or loneliness, no confusion or doubt. But these sufferings can only be dealt with creatively when they are understood as wounds integral to our human condition. Therefore, ministry is a very confronting service. It does not allow people to live with illusions of immortality and wholeness. It keeps reminding others that they are broken and mortal, but also that with the recognition of this condition, liberation starts. The ministry of the Longboat Island Chapel is not simply the work that Pastor Gil and I do. The ministry of the Longboat Island Chapel is what we do together to engage a wounded world. How is this possible? How can a broken man or a woman bring healing to the world? Naum concludes, when we become aware that we do not have to escape our pains, but that we can mobilize them into a common search for life, these very pains are transformed from expressions of despair into signs of hope. The scriptures testify that God did not necessarily change the world by employing powerful, insightful, and visionary leadership, but through working with people just like us, afraid, wounded. It's our entry into the world around us, a path of engagement with our neighbors. We understand how to walk alongside our brothers and sisters because we've been there, and yet willing to share this journey with them. Our ministry, our calling is simply this, to ensure that no one walks this journey alone. The psalmist proclaims anew this morning, this poor soul cried, and was heard by the Lord. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy, comforted are those who take refuge in God.